Now, when traveling, I would make it a priority to get protein in during the first few meals. And if your goal is 150 grams of protein per day, don't sweat it and be like, okay, like I need to break this up into 20, 30 gram increments. Like if you can, amazing. But I would say like minimally in 3 meals, aim to get in 40 to 50 grams. And this might mean ordering extra in addition to whatever your normal meal is. Like it's not weird. Like we live in a day and age where it's like, whatever, just like don't focus so much on like what other people think. Like if you're literally you're at a McDonald's, it's like get 2 of the egg white McMuffin things and like just work with that. Get a second chicken breast. Like you can do things that definitely will serve at least getting in your protein in. And I know it might seem like, well, I have to think about this the entirety of each day. Well, yeah. And I would say like, even if you fall short on carbs and fats, like that's okay. Like be a little more flexible with like, okay, try to get in at least 40 grams fat, which should be pretty easy if you're going out to eat at any point throughout the day. But with the carbs, you can be a little bit more variable with them. Protein is something that's going to be harder to hit regularly, and you're probably going to be underserved in terms of like actual serving size. So I think if you can get ahead of it, and that's where like when we went to Vegas before the Tampa trip, like we had a super early flight. We both had a Fairlife. Like I had 26 grams, he had 42 before we even like, it was like 4:30 in the morning or something ridiculous. Had that, got on the plane, got another Fairlife for the trip. By the time we got to Vegas, we were both about like, I think I was like 60 grams of protein in because I had like other snacks too. But Jordan was about 120 grams in. And that was like at 11 a.m. in the morning. And at that point, it's like, okay, so he's hitting like 300 grams. I'm hitting like 150. So we're already in a position where we don't really have to think about it heavily the rest of the day. Because even if we just have 1 or 2 more meals, well, in his case, he does have to think about it heavily. In my case, I'm like, I only need a little bit more. Now, that's kind of the place I want to be in with all of these levers, like all of these variables, including, water, training. Like I just want to have it pre-planned and be in a position where it takes less planning when I'm actually more fatigued and willpower is lower. So I think if you can, one, pre-plan how many meals you're going to have, divide your protein goal across these meals to avoid playing catch up later in the day, they're going to be a lot better off for it. In terms of like protein focused, like snacks and stuff, that's something I would like generally just be mindful of. Like, are you overdoing the fats to get protein in? Because like that's kind of counterproductive. Like at that point now, like, yeah, you're going over calories, and maybe in the case of someone who has a high intake. So if you're like Jordan, you're like, I need 4,000 calories or 4,300 calories to not lose weight. In that case, yeah, me have the higher fat thing. In my case, I'm like, I will blow through my 2,200 calorie budget, even when I'm building, I'll blow through that very quickly if I'm just like loading on all these additional fats in meals that like, frankly, like my focus is just the protein. So keep that in mind relative to the phase that you're in. And if you can't find protein rich snacks, it might be better just to fast or wait until your next meal where you can consume a leaner protein rather than overeating lower quality options or higher calorie options. Number 3, okay, pre-plan high calorie meals. So if you know that you have a high calorie meal coming up, this happened all the time when we were away. If you know that's going to be later in the day, okay, appetizer, dinner, dessert, maybe you're sharing a bunch of plates, stick to lighter meals and vegetables earlier in the day. So like, I know generally what I tend to eat is like, I will have an English muffin or a bagel. Bagels, much higher carb. I love adding like nut butter, cream cheese, even just straight butter to that. But I know like if we have a date night planned, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with the English muffin because that's a little bit lighter. Maybe instead of using 2 tablespoons of nut butter, I'm just going to use like 5 grams of cream cheese or 5 grams of just butter. Already, I'm like in more of a budgeting mindset. And I think if you can start the day with that attitude, it's going to put you ahead, or at least put you in a position where you're not going into that meal already kind of on the cusp of needing to be pretty rigid with foods that are going to be very difficult to track. I would also say like thinking about buildable meals, that's a really helpful way. So in the case where we know like we're going to eat out later in the day, but we're having something like Chipotle, I mean, like I do kind of eyeball it. I don't get crazy with it and like weigh out like, hey, how much rice did they give me? I'm just like, okay, this looks like more than 60 grams of carbs. So maybe I'm not going to finish it. Maybe I'm going to give it to Jordan. Maybe I'm going to save it for later. Just being honest generally and being a little more conservative with your calories throughout the day, that will set you up for a little bit more of a budget going into that final meal.